tumbleweed and thought, hey, there goes lunch. Almost nothing grew in the devastated fields of the Dust Bowl, except for weeds. Tumbleweeds and common edible weeds like lamb's quarters thrived as other crops perished. Tumbleweeds could also be consumed raw, cooked like your favorite greens, or as an ingredient in soup. You won't find that one on Noodles & Company's secret menu. Out of desperation, families brined and canned the weeds to store for winter. It's not exactly Green Giant, but at least it was edible. Canning was crucial to survival. Nearly 4,000 community canning kitchens tried to provide food to struggling families. Thanks to the efforts of the Ball Canning Corporation, families learned the special canning skills they needed to preserve food during this difficult time. During the Great Depression, nutritionists emphasized the importance of milk, so it became a common ingredient in recipes from the period. One bizarre example of this is the strange case of popcorn with milk. Unlike popcorn at movie theaters today, popcorn was affordable for families hit hard by the Great Depression. Instead of taking out a second mortgage to buy a bag of the delicious puffed corn, you could often get one for only 5 to 10 cents. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $1 to $2 in 2021. Instead of slathering the popular snack in butter, hungry individuals poured milk onto the corn and consumed it as a meal. It wasn't even for breakfast. Popcorn with milk became a dinner-time staple as the main course. One could argue the meeting of popcorn and milk might result in a soggy mess, but it was just another meal born out of necessity. The taste of various foods wasn't a huge priority for many Dust Bowl residents. Food had to be cheap and filling, so people developed recipes with that in mind. The results were concoctions we likely wouldn't even consider eating today. Take the case of corned beef luncheon salad. This monstrosity was a volatile mix of canned corn and peas, combined with gelatin, lemon juice, and vinegar. The dish was one of many similar recipes from the era. In his book, A Square Meal, A Culinary History of the Great Depression, author Andy Coe called the dish wrong in every way possible. It may not be gourmet, but at least it's not meatless meatloaf or on a shingle. Marmalade is a fantastic breakfast treat. Unfortunately, the oranges needed to make it were scarce in the Dust Bowl. Author and English professor Mildred Armstrong Kalish lived through the Dust Bowl. In her book, Little Heathens, she described how her family preserved food on their farm. Kalish recalled that oranges and bananas were a rare treat. They depended on what was growing, so berries and carrots were the order of the day. Since most folks lacked the citrus to make marmalade, they substituted carrots to make jelly. Kalish described it in her book. With oranges and money in short supply, there was no way we could make orange marmalade, but we did grow marvelous carrots. When combined with just one orange and some honey, they always made a very tasty marmalade. Her recipe only uses 2 cups of raw carrots and a single large orange, and it was apparently delicious. She goes on to tell readers that she never preserved the jelly because they ate it too fast, and if they discovered mold, they wouldn't throw the jelly away. Instead, the kids just scraped the mold off the top half-inch of the jar and ate the jelly anyway. When cooking oil was in short supply, people substituted bacon grease for their cooking needs. In addition to her marmalade recipe, Armstrong spoke at length about the benefits of bacon drippings in her book. She cooked with it constantly, referring to it as her family's Tuscan olive oil. Sometimes her family drizzled the delicious grease over bread, eggs, or seasonal vegetables. It also goes great with beans. Where is that steamable frozen broccoli dripping with bacon grease? Many people who lived through the Depression passed on the value of saving bacon grease for later use to their children. There are still plenty of recipes and people online who swear by the versatility of the grease today. While you probably wouldn't eat the little yellow flowers today, dandelions provided an unlikely food source during difficult times. Dandelion salad was one such recipe, and it was easy to make. It started with picking plenty of dandelions. Then you'd cut the flowers and roots off the plant. After discarding the dead leaves, folks rinsed the fresh ones with water to remove dirt. Sometimes, the leaves were soaked in clean water or blanched to get them ready for a meal. The salad would be tossed together and sprinkled with lemon juice, olive oil, or salt. It ultimately created a nutty, slightly bitter-tasting meal that probably went well with bacon or cheese. Casseroles were a common dish in the Dust Bowl. Casseroles were ideal as a vehicle for nutrition in a time when food was scarce. But when we say casserole, we're we're not talking about baked ziti. Instead, casseroles were a jumble of nutritious and cheap ingredients. Many of them included a sauce made of flour, butter, milk, and salt. This white sauce found its way into many recipes from the era, especially casseroles. One of the worst offenders was probably spaghetti with white sauce casserole. This nutritional nightmare involved mushy and overcooked spaghetti noodles, boiled carrots, and the dreaded white sauce. Cooks baked the mixture in a tray until it was bland and ready to eat. The dish wasn't supposed to have much flavor or get your family excited about dinner. But does anyone get excited about casseroles? Take a minute to discuss that among yourselves. Everyone loves a slice of cake once in a while. But what do you do if you don't have the ingredients to make one? You improvise. People didn't let the lack of eggs, milk, and butter stop them from baking cakes. Instead, they used a blend of spices, flour, and sugar to make a unique dessert. Water served as a milk substitute, while baking powder and vegetable oil replaced eggs and butter, respectively. Unlike other Dust Bowl recipes, this depression cake was quite good. Despite being granted a patent in 1935, instant cake mixes didn't really take off until after the Second World War. So these cakes were a good alternative during a rough time. Protein is an integral part of everyone's diet. Jackrabbits filled this role admirably for Dust Bowl residents. A meal of jackrabbit, biscuits, and beans was almost a staple meal. In an area where virtually nothing was bountiful, jackrabbits were the exception. The rabbits thrived in the warm, dry weather, and hunting the rabbits served a dual purpose. The first was to provide an essential source of food. The second was to prevent the rabbits from eating any of the few crops that grew in the harsh environment. Farmers even had a clever name for the critters, Hoover hogs, after the president they blamed for causing the Great Depression in the first place. Pickling has been a means of preserving food for thousands of years. So it would make sense to prepare for hard times by preserving as much food as possible. And that's what people living through the Dust Bowl did. People pickled berries and other fruits during the summer. The storage-friendly fruits could be bartered or canned for special occasions. Pickling fruits is a pretty straightforward dinner-time activity. Just simmer whole or sliced fruits in a syrup made with vinegar or lemon juice. Afterward, you've got a healthy, portable food that'll last for a while. Breakfast during the Depression was a unique affair. Along with potato pancakes and milk corno, cornmeal mush was one of the several breakfast foods popular among Dust Bowl residents. While it's not as strange as some other options, it's not something most of us think is a breakfast food. Similar to polenta, cornmeal mush can be made by boiling any kind of cornmeal in water until it thickens. It has a mildly sweet flavor and could be eaten with milk or fried for other recipes. The result was a surprisingly tasty and robust dish that helped keep people fed in times of great need.